You've read the text 4 times. You know exactly how many hours it took them to reply. You replayed the conversation in your head on the way home. You asked your friend what they thought. Your friend said, "Just ask them." And you said, "Yeah, maybe." And then you didn't. Because what if you're wrong? That right there, that loop, is one of the most quietly exhausting places a person can live. And here's what nobody tells you about it. The reason you're stuck in that loop is not because the signs aren't there. It's because you've been taught to look for the wrong ones. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through what attraction actually does to a person. Not the vague stuff you've already heard, but the specific, science-backed patterns that show up in someone's body, their behavior, and the specific things they say when they think you're not fully paying attention. And at the very end, I'm going to give you one question, just one, that cuts through every bit of confusion, faster than any checklist ever could. Stay with me. Value promise. Before we get into it, I want to be honest about something most videos like this won't tell you. Reading attraction is genuinely hard, not because you're bad at it, but because people, especially people who like someone, are often actively trying to hide it, out of fear, out of pride, out of not wanting to look too eager. So the signals are real, but they're layered, and most people only learn to read the surface layer. What we're going to do here is go 3 layers deep. Layer 1 is what the body does involuntarily, the things a person cannot fake or consciously control. Layer 2 is behavioral, the consistent patterns that show up across time, not just in one moment. And layer 3 is verbal, the specific things someone says, and more importantly, the things they leave unsaid, that reveal exactly where their head is. By the time we're done, you'll have a completely different framework for reading this, not a checklist, an actual understanding. Let's start at layer 1. Layer 1. What the body does involuntarily. Picture this. You're in a group setting. Could be a party, a work event, a casual hangout with mutual friends. There's someone there you've been wondering about, and you're trying, very casually, very naturally, to watch how they act around you versus everyone else. This is actually the right instinct. Comparison is key, because the body doesn't perform differently for everyone. It responds differently to specific people, and that difference is the signal. Here's what to look for. The eyes tell 2 different stories. Most people know that eye contact can signal interest, but here's the part most people miss. It's not just whether they look at you, it's where they look. A 2014 study published in Psychological Science found something fascinating. When participants were asked to think about love, they spent more time looking at the other person's face. When they were asked to think about lust, they looked at the body. This distinction, face versus body, is something the eyes do almost automatically depending on the emotional quality of the attraction. So when this person is talking to you, notice where their gaze tends to land. Someone who is developing genuine feelings tends to look at your face, your eyes, your expressions. Not because they're being polite, but because they're genuinely trying to read you. They want to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. That kind of attention is not something people extend casually. The pupils are doing something you can't fake. When a person looks at something, or someone, they find genuinely appealing, the pupils dilate. This is a brain response. It is completely involuntary. You cannot decide to dilate your pupils, and you cannot stop them from dilating when you're attracted to someone. A 2016 study confirmed that faces expressing sexual interest had objectively larger, darker pupils than faces of disinterest. The difference is subtle, but if you're close enough to someone in a conversation and you're paying attention, you can notice it. The next time you're having a one-on-one conversation with this person, in decent lighting, take a quiet look, not a stare, just a glance. Are their pupils noticeably wide? It's not definitive on its own, but paired with everything else we're building here, it matters. Their voice changes, and not in the way most people describe. You may have heard that nervous people talk faster or stumble over their words around someone they like. That's true, but there's a deeper layer to the voice signal. Research has shown that both men and women unconsciously modulate their voice pitch when speaking to someone they find attractive. Men tend to lower their voice, an instinctive signal of presence and calm. Women tend to raise their pitch slightly, a signal of warmth and openness. Neither group does this intentionally. It happens because the brain is trying to make itself more attractive to this specific person. Here's the practical test. Listen to how this person speaks in a group, their natural register, their speed, their tone. Then listen to how they speak when they're addressing you directly. Is there a shift, even a slight one? Does the warmth in their voice increase when it's pointed at you? That shift is the nervous system revealing something the person may not have said out loud yet. The body closes the distance. A 2020 study found that active sexual attraction causes people to reduce their preferred interpersonal distance with a potential partner. In other words, when someone likes you, they unconsciously move closer. It's not dramatic. They don't lean across the table and announce their feelings. It shows up as a slight angle toward you when you're both in a group. Choosing the seat next to you when other seats are available, standing at the edge of your personal space rather than 2 feet further back. The body wants to be near what it's drawn to. That's not poetry, it's biology. Story bridge. Let me bring in someone to make this concrete. Call her Maya, mid-20s, been spending time with a colleague named Daniel over the past few weeks. Nothing official, a lot of just hanging out. A lot of ambiguity. Maya had been cataloging individual moments. Daniel laughed at her jokes. Daniel texted her on weekends. Daniel remembered small things she'd mentioned, but she couldn't tell if that was just him being a warm, socially attentive person, or if it was specifically about her. This is exactly the right question to be asking, and it's also where most people get stuck. Because individual moments can be explained away. What you're looking for, what actually reveals genuine interest, is a consistent pattern across all 3 layers. Not one sign, the whole picture. Let's move to layer 2. Layer 2. Behavioral patterns across time. The body gives you involuntary signals. Behavior gives you consistent ones. And this is where the real separation happens between someone who is genuinely interested and someone who is simply warm, friendly, and good with people. They remember things you said, specifically. Not your name, not your general vibe, specific things. A passing comment you made about something you collect. A family story you told in a group 3 weeks ago. The name of your childhood dog that came up once in a casual conversation. This kind of memory isn't accidental. Memory consolidation is effortful. We retain what we pay close attention to. And when someone is genuinely interested in you, their attention is higher quality when they're with you. They're not half listening. They're building a mental picture of who you are because they want one. When someone follows up on a detail you shared, unprompted, that is behavioral evidence of sustained interest, not just a nice moment, evidence. They initiate, and not always for a reason. Think about how you use your phone. When you genuinely like someone, you don't always text them because you have something to say. You text them because you thought of them, because something reminded you of them, because you just wanted to reach out. This kind of low-stakes, unprompted contact is one of the clearest behavioral signals there is. It's not a reply. Anyone can reply. It's an initiation. It means you were in their thoughts unprompted. Watch the ratio of who initiates contact, not obsessively, but over time the pattern will tell you something. If every conversation begins with you, that's data. If they reach out casually and often for no particular reason, that's data in the other direction. They introduce you to their world, even subtly. Here's a sign that is almost never discussed in content like this, but is one of the most reliable behavioral indicators that exists. When someone is genuinely developing feelings for you, they want you inside their life, not just adjacent to it. This doesn't have to mean meeting the family. In the early stages, it looks like smaller things. Mentioning a show they think you'd like and sending you the link, tagging you in something, suggesting you come to a thing they're already going to, naming you to their friends before you've met them. People who are protecting emotional distance keep their worlds separate. People who are opening up blur the boundary between your world and theirs. Watch which direction this person moves. Their behavior is consistent, not dazzling one week and absent the next. This one is crucial, and it's the one that the anxious brain most frequently misreads. Genuine interest creates consistent presence, not perfect, not suffocating, but reliably there. What many people confuse for passion is actually instability. The relationship that swings between electric highs and radio silence feels intense precisely because the uncertainty produces anxiety. And anxiety in the body can feel a lot like excitement. But a person who genuinely likes you doesn't disappear for days and then reappear with a burst of warmth. They're just there, in a quiet, undramatic, dependable way. The texts arrive at a pace that feels natural. Plans get made and kept. Stability doesn't feel electric. It feels safe. And safe, if you've spent time in unstable dynamics, can initially feel underwhelming, which is one of the most disorienting things about learning to recognize genuine interest. Emotional contrast. The nervous system truth. I want to pause here and say something that might change how you think about all of this. There's a dating coach named Amy Leadingham who said something in her writing that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She described the difference between relationships that were wrong for her and the relationship that became her marriage like this. With the wrong ones, she was always slightly on edge, hyper-vigilant, waiting for something to shift. The attraction felt intense, but underneath it there was always a low hum of anxiety. With her husband, even from the early weeks, something felt different. Her shoulders dropped when she saw him. Her breathing slowed. She could be imperfect, and it wasn't a catastrophe. She described it this way: emotional safety feels like being able to take a deep breath. Now, here's why that matters for what we're discussing. When you are around someone who genuinely likes you, not just someone who is attracted to you in a complicated, inconsistent way, but someone who is actually developing real feelings and acting on them, your nervous system responds. Not with the anxious fizz of wondering where you stand, with something quieter, a loosening, a sense that you can show up as yourself and it will be okay. Most people are so accustomed to the anxious version of attraction that when the calmer version arrives, they don't recognize it. It doesn't feel like enough. Where's the intensity? Where's the drama? The drama was never chemistry. It was just uncertainty. Your nervous system knows the difference. And if you pay attention to how you feel in your body after spending time with this person, not during the exciting moments but afterward, in the quiet, it will tell you something honest. Do you feel lighter, or do you feel like you need to analyze what just happened? Layer 3. What they say and leave unsaid. The third layer is language, and this is where things get specific. They ask questions that don't have an obvious social purpose. Research by Ficton and colleagues found that people showing genuine interest in a conversation ask detailed, open-ended, and personal questions, not to be polite, but because they want to understand you more fully. The distinction is this: a polite question has a natural ending. "How was your weekend?" can be answered in one sentence. An interested question follows up. "What made you want to do that? Have you always felt that way? What was that like for you?" When someone is asking questions that require you to go deeper, that is not social performance. That is someone actively building a picture of who you are. You do not build that picture for people you don't care about. They remember the conversation between conversations. Here's a subtle but powerful one. Pay attention to whether references from a previous conversation show up organically in the next one. Last time you mentioned you were stressed about that. Did it end up working out? That is a person who is listening closely enough to retain something that mattered to you. That is a person who thought about you between the times you were together. That is not something people do by accident. When they're busy, they don't just say they're busy. This one comes directly from research on social signaling, and it's simple but often missed. When someone is not interested but doesn't want to be unkind, they cancel or decline and leave it at that. "Sorry, I'm busy." End of message. When someone is interested and genuinely unavailable, they acknowledge the conflict and keep the door open. "I can't do Saturday, but I'm free Thursday evening. Would that work?" The rescheduling is not accidental. The date offered is not automatic politeness. It is evidence of wanting to find a way. Watch what they do after a no. A person who likes you doesn't just say no. The things they do not say to everyone else. One of the clearest verbal signals is this: a private tone reserved for you. When someone is developing genuine feelings, the register of how they speak to you, the level of softness, specificity, warmth, and occasionally vulnerability, is different from how they speak in group settings. They tell you things they don't announce publicly, not because they're being secretive, but because what they're sharing is specifically meant for you. The small disclosures, the "I've never really talked about this with many people," the jokes that only land because you both know a context no one else in the room has. Intimacy builds through shared context, and shared context is built deliberately by people who want it.
The payoff, the thing that cuts through all of it.
So you've watched their body language, you've tracked their behavior over time, you've listened to how they talk and what they choose to share with you specifically. And here's the thing I promised you at the beginning. A researcher named Katerina Portka wrote something that stopped me cold when I first read it. She said, if you are spending significant mental energy decoding whether someone likes you, if you are rereading texts and replaying conversations and polling your friends, that effort itself is information. Because when someone genuinely likes you, the picture is clear. Not every individual moment. Individual moments can always be ambiguous, but the overall picture, the body language, the behavior, the language across time, adds up to something you don't have to squint at. If the overall picture is genuinely unclear, not because you're being anxious, but because the signals are genuinely inconsistent, that inconsistency is the signal. It tells you that this person either doesn't know what they want, or they do know and they're not ready to show you. Neither of those is a reason to keep decoding. So here is your one question, the question I promised you. After spending time with this person, not during the exciting moments, but in the quiet afterward, ask yourself this: do I feel like I can breathe? Not perfectly calm, not fireworks free, but fundamentally, do you feel safe enough to be yourself? Or do you feel like you're waiting for a verdict? The answer to that question is more honest than any checklist. because someone who genuinely likes you doesn't make you feel like you're auditioning. To pull it all together, layer 1 is the body, the involuntary signals that cannot be faked, the gaze that lands on your face, the pupils that widen, the voice that softens or lowers specifically for you, the body that closes the distance. Layer 2 is behavior, what they do consistently across time. They remember what you said. They initiate without needing a reason. They let you into their world, and they show up steadily without drama. Layer 3 is language, the questions that go deeper than they need to, the follow-ups that prove they were listening, the "I'm busy but I want to see you" rescheduling, and the private warmth they don't give to everyone in the room. And underneath all of it, your own nervous system. Pay attention to how you feel when you leave this person. That signal is older and more honest than anything your analytical brain will produce. If any part of this landed for you, if something here named something you've been feeling but couldn't quite articulate, I'd genuinely love to know. Drop a comment and tell me, which layer do you find hardest to read in someone? The body, the behavior, or the words? I read these, and the answers usually tell me what the next video should be. If this helped, share it with someone who's currently living in that exhausting loop of not knowing. They need this more than the algorithm does. One last thing before you go. Now that you have a clearer picture of whether someone likes you, there's a harder question waiting just underneath it. Do you actually like them, or do you just like being liked? Those are two very different things, and most people have never stopped to ask.